Okay. All right, we're going to give everybody one more minute. Say where you're from. I guess maybe the three of us should share what's going on in our world. I'm Lelena and I have a almost 2-year-old, so I'm in toddler land. What about you, Emily?
Okay, so I am a mom of 3 girls. They are 9, 7, and 2.5. And I always joked, you see that gap there? My third was obviously a COVID baby. I said we were done having kids, and then there she came.
Surprise, surprise. Hannah, what about you?
So I have a 6, 4, and 6-month-old, 2 boys and a girl. So I'm in the breastfeeding baby.
All right, she's deep in it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. And again, as you join us, you are attending Breastfeeding Basics here with Mom Cozy and NAPS. And please tell us where you're from in the chat. We love a good interactive webinar. So keep it moving in the chat. I will say, please just be very respectful. This is a safe space. No judgment, no guilting, no mom shaming. If you do it, we will kick you out. Just because we want to create a good environment for everybody. Um, if you are having challenges with hearing, I see something in the audio, go down and toggle on the bottom and it says audio, and you should be able to select a speaker. So that may be your issue there, and I can help you further. Alrighty, we are going to start. I'm going to introduce myself and Mom Cozy, and then Emily will introduce herself. So my name is Elena. I'm the North American Marketing Manager for Mom Cozy. And if you've noticed, we have been leading a breastfeeding campaign, breaking barriers, real support for all breastfeeding journeys. And this webinar series is dedicated to every single journey out there because all breastfeeding journeys are beautiful. If you could advance to the next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. A little bit about us at Mom Cozy, if you're not familiar. We've been around since 2018. We actually started with nursing and pumping bras because we realized we can make them beautiful, not just functional. Since then, we have a full range of products, from pregnancy pillows to breast pumps, wearable breast pumps, to all of it. We are proud to serve 4 million moms in over 60 plus countries. And our commitment to you is innovation and cozy designs born from love, just to make your life as a mom a little easier.
There we go. I'm getting you.
All good. I do want to make a quick plug before we get started. Please join our community. Pull your phone out, join our Facebook community. Very cool stuff. Emily is going to be popping on every single Wednesday. We call them office hours with Emily. She's going to answer all of your questions, not just breastfeeding, but parent care, baby care, all the things. And you can also get encouragement from 15,000 moms, upcoming events, and content catered to you, plus the updates on Mom Cozy. And with that, I'm pleased to pass it over to Ms. Emily Silver. I'm going to give her a digital applause.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you to Mom Cozy for hosting me. My name is Emily Silver. I am one of the co-founders of NAPS. I own NAPS alongside my business partner, Jamie O'Day, who you see in the picture here. I am a family nurse practitioner and a board certified lactation consultant. And as I told you, a mom to 3 girls. I was a labor and delivery nurse for a very long time in my nursing career before becoming a nurse practitioner. And today what I do is I support parents in a lot of different ways through pregnancy, the newborn phase, baby into the toddler years, through education and support through NAPS. We offer so many things, and I don't want to take up too much of our time now telling you about it. We can talk more at the end as well, but we do prenatal education, postpartum nursing support, a lot of feeding support, sleep support, new mom support groups. We are able to take care of parents from all over the country and out of the country through our online membership platform. But you're always going to engage with a real nurse in real time. So everyone on our team, and this is what I think is important for you to know, is a registered nurse or a nurse practitioner. We also have a mental health expert, a doctor of pelvic floor physical therapy, occupational therapy. We are trying to get parents into one place for all of your questions, where you will get a trusted, reliable answer from real medical professionals And we do that through our Ask a Nurse board, live Q&As, and webinars or classes just like this. So because you're here in real time or things are live, you can actually ask us your questions. And if we miss you in real time, our Ask a Nurse board, instead of Googling something, you can literally write us a question anytime and we will answer you within 24 hours. It's not a bot, it's a real person, and we're gonna ask you lots of questions to help you come up with an answer that's best for your family. We will always give you medical advice, like what do we know through research? What do we not know through research? But we always just said to do it that way. And because we're moms and parents just like you, we are going to offer some real life parenting advice in the mix as well. We will always come from a judgment-free place. And so I hope that today, through just my style and teaching and through this series, because I'll be with you Fridays throughout August, offering other opportunities and classes in this series, that you'll get that vibe from me. And so today I'm really excited. We are here to talk about breastfeeding basics. I think that this content is very helpful if you're out there and you are expecting a baby and you're wondering, like, how's this going to work? How do I make milk? All the way to perhaps see a lot of you are out there and you're home with babies and you might be wondering just more about this process of breastfeeding. So let's just get into the basics. When it comes to breastfeeding basics, it's really cool. When you become pregnant, your body already is starting to prepare you for breastfeeding. And in fact, and you probably noticed this in your pregnancy, your breasts start to change in shape and size. They're really starting to grow because you're developing milk ducts in your early pregnancy. What happens when you become pregnant is that you have increased levels of hormones, those being estrogen and progesterone. And as those hormones increase in your pregnancy, it tells your body, like, let's start developing all these milk ducts so we can make milk for the baby that we're growing. Colostrum, which I'm going to talk about milk coming up and like the progression of your milk coming in, but I think it's super cool. You start making colostrum in your second trimester. This is that early milk that your baby gets right away after delivery, but you are preparing it and making it in your pregnancy. A lot of women that I work with will tell me towards the end of their pregnancy, when they're getting closer to delivery, that if they look down or if they were to express a little bit of milk from their breast tissue out of the nipple, they'll see that colostrum coming. Then, okay, we're growing, we're making milk throughout the whole pregnancy, we're making that colostrum, then we go through labor and delivery and birth. We have birth classes if you want to learn more about actual childbirth, but what happens is after delivery, the baby comes out and the placenta detaches from your uterus and you deliver your placenta. And your body tells your brain, like, oh, things are changing again. There's a drop in estrogen, a drop in progesterone, and that is actually what initiates lactation. And it tells your body, let's start making more colostrum because the baby is here. And it starts circulating hormones like oxytocin and prolactin. I'll talk more about supply and demand. And then here we go. We're off on our breastfeeding journey. Before I go into more on milk, like making milk and what is it going to feel like and what can you expect, I want to talk about the hospital stay. You receive a lot of support in the hospitals or birthing centers, which is great. A common misconception is that once you're home, you would only need to call or seek support if you were having a problem. And I want to call that out, being that it's World Breastfeeding Week and we're talking about breastfeeding all month, is that lactation consultants, IBCLCs, CLCs, nurses, we are here to help you all of the time throughout the entire journey. That journey might be long. I might be helping a patient past that first birthday. And we're not here for just a problem. And so in the hospital, while you receive a lot of support, I just want to put that out there. When you go home that first week and so many things change, that's a great time to have someone swoop in and help you, or to show up at a webinar like this, or to jump on the Mom Cozy Facebook group and ask a question and seek help and support. When you are in the hospital, even though you're getting a lot of support, I still want you to know and feel empowered to call for help. So in the labor and delivery room, really breastfeeding is often initiated within that first hour after delivery. In our classes, we talk a lot about skin to skin and leaving the baby on your chest. That's quite literally after they're born. They come right up to your chest. We put a nice warm blanket over them, and we usually leave moms and babies skin to skin for about an hour. And that's because they are going through so many transitions after delivery. And once we leave them for that time to transition in that hour, they actually start to show natural instincts of being interested in wanting to breastfeed and smelling and sniffing and looking for your breast. So typically that first feeding experience is in the labor and delivery room about an hour after delivery, and the nurse will help you. Often in many hospitals, you're then transferred down to a postpartum unit or somewhere where you're going to stay until you go home with the baby. And at that point, there's many nurses, feeding specialists, pediatricians. It's a lot of traffic, right? If you've had a baby and you're already home postpartum, you can tell me in the chat, it probably felt like a lot of people were coming in and out of your room. When it's time for a feed, I want you as the parents to feel confident and comfortable to hit your call bell and ask for your nurse or someone who's available to come in and help you feed. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to take this class today. You might learn about breastfeeding, but you need a lot of help in those, especially in those first feeds as you're navigating how to latch your baby. Is it okay? Am I doing it right? Are they sucking right? Are they getting milk? And so I want you to take advantage of those resources. I'm going to teach you today how you should get a deep latch and how we're not going to tolerate pain. Because when it comes to pain, what I want everyone to know is that pain is not normal. It's common. It's common. And that's the difference. Hear the difference in those words. Sometimes when things are common, we're really quick to label it, especially in the medical world, unfortunately, as it's normal, that happens. And so, yes, I'm sure you've heard about pain. People having soreness with their nipples or damaged nipples or struggling with their milk supply. And just because things are common doesn't mean they're normal. There is always a way that we can help you to make it better. I never want you to tolerate pain. So if you're in the hospital and you're uncomfortable or it's hurting, that's another great reason to hit that bell and call someone in. If you're home and you're having pain, I want you to call for support in your community, whether it's someone in person or joining a group or coming to something virtual and talking to us. Now, one really other great thing that you can do when you're in the hospital to help encourage your milk to come in, and we'll talk about the progression of milk, is to do a little bit of massage of your breasts and compression before you get going with your feed to really help stimulate that milk production. Instead of using my own boob on camera today, I always bring a balloon because I find myself grabbing my own boob when I'm teaching classes. But like when you're touching your breast tissue, what we're doing here is we're actually just offering some gentle compression and massage down towards the base of your areola and your nipple and around the breast, and some compression where you're kind of pushing in and you're letting go. And simple movements like that are going to tell your body like, oh, this is really great contact on that breast tissue to help encourage your milk to pass down to your baby's mouth, but also to tell your body, let's continue that milk production in those early days as well. In the beginning, in the hospital, what I will say is the first 24 hours, babies are really here for it. They're like, I'm excited, let's latch, let's suck. And then all babies get really sleepy about 24 hours after birth. And this can be discouraging for parents because down on postpartum, they'll say, I don't understand. We had such a great feed last night on labor and delivery. And now your baby's really sleepy. They're really tired. They're hard to wake up. That's okay. That's common. That's going to happen. We're going to teach you in the hospital how to unwrap them, how to change their diaper. I'll tickle their cheek. I'll tickle their feet. Another really great trick when you're breastfeeding is their arm. If you buck it like a chicken, okay? If you flap their arm while they're feeding, that actually stimulates sucking. So we're trying to get them up and wake them up and encourage those frequent feeds. And oftentimes women find that babies are at the breast for quite a bit in those early days as the milk is coming in. They might be feeding for 20 minutes to 30 minutes on your breast. Those of you home with newborns, I'm sure you've noticed that it might be very normal that your baby takes a feed on one side, they fall asleep. You can't really get them to go to the second side, and they take a break of up to 30 minutes before they're ready to feed again. That's a normal newborn behavior. Okay, before we keep going, let's come back to this whole making milk thing that I already started to reference. So you make colostrum in your pregnancy, and it's there at delivery. Your body is really smart, and it's like, I'm gonna make exactly what this baby needs. In that those early days, your baby's belly is very small. It's about the size of a marble. As we get a little bit further out into the week, it grows a bit like a shooter marble. And by a week of age, it's sort of like the size of a ping pong ball. And the capacity is about 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces. So I'm telling you this because in the first day with your baby and you only have colostrum, you're going to think to yourself, this just doesn't feel like enough. But it actually is really thick, really sturdy in nutrients and calories. It's dense. And your baby's belly is really, really small, and your body is smart, and it's exactly what your baby needs. Now, we get going with breastfeeding right away in the hospital, and it's going to feel like you're feeding your baby all the time because that stimulation, sucking and swallowing, that contact with your nipple, your areola, and your breast tissue, or if you were separated from your baby, maybe they're in the NICU, pumping, right? Stimulation of the breast tissue tells your body, hey, let's release more prolactin and oxytocin, and that's what's going to tell your body to start making milk. So in those early weeks of breastfeeding, it starts to feel like you're feeding your baby about every 2 to 3 hours during the day and about every 3 to 4 hours at night. Now, you get home from the hospital, okay? You're about like maybe 2 or 3 days out, 3 or 4 days out, and your milk is starting to change. It's starting to get a little bit bigger in quantity, but it's still, if you looked at it, if you pumped it and looked at it, it's still, it's not thick and sticky and golden like colostrum. It looks like creamer. It's like this like golden colored milk, okay? Your milk is transitioning. It's not this light switch where one day you don't have milk and the next day you do, although it feels like that. What your body is doing is it's transitioning in those days, and frequent feeds and increased hormonal output is what helps take the transition from the colostrum to your mature milk. So you have this transitional period where it's starting to get more in volume, it's like thicker and more golden in color, and then all of a sudden about, everyone's going to be different. Let's call it 3 to 5 days out. Sometimes it's a week for some women. Your mature milk comes in. Now we have more volume, and it's changing in color. It starts to look thinner and whiter. So we went from like thick coffee creamer to skim milk. All right, that's what it starts to look like if you were to express milk and look at it. Now, supply and demand. Before I taught this class today, someone asked me, how will I know my milk is in, and how do I keep it for my baby? What's really cool about your milk supply is as you bring your milk in and then your full supply comes in, your body is able to keep up with supply and demand from your baby because it starts to recognize your feeds. So if I'm feeding my baby every 3 hours, my baby latches to the breast, they suck, they're swallowing, they take a break, I burp them, maybe they take the other side, and now they're full. They're like, okay, my belly's full, I'm going to take a break. There's always milk left behind in the breast, but they've really drained them. And your body in those, 2 hours until the next feed does this little rest and reset. It starts to reboot, and your body knows, that baby's probably going to be back again soon, and it starts to fill up with milk again. And so as long as we're having expression of breast milk with breastfeeding or say pumping, your body starts to recognize this pattern and starts to make exactly what your baby needs. And it's able to not only bring in your full milk supply, but you maintain it. Now, a common thing that I hear or that you'll read on social media is that around 6 to 8 weeks out, women start to feel like they don't have as much milk anymore. And a lot of women do that. When I'm working with them with lactation or in a feeding support group, they'll say, geez, I felt like I had so much milk in the beginning and I still have milk now, but my breasts don't feel as full, or if I were to pump, not as much comes out, and they're worried about their supply. In the beginning, your body tends to overproduce, plus your baby's having small, frequent feeds. As they get a little bit older in those first 12 weeks, and their belly grows, they take in a little bit more at feeds. And so while your breast milk supply doesn't change, it stays the same, they might take it differently. Instead of eating every 2 hours, they're eating every 3 hours, right? Plus, with that, as your baby breastfeeds for 10 to 15 minutes, maybe they go to this side for 10 minutes, your brain starts to realize exactly what they need. So if it made a little bit too much in the beginning or you had an oversupply, it starts to slow down with you and be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to make exactly what your baby needs. All right. So typically speaking, what's really cool about breastfeeding is about 1 month to 6 months in this journey, your body will establish your milk supply, and it usually is about the same. Obviously, there's highs and lows and there's caveats, right? When we go back to work, which we're going to talk about later in the series, or feeling like you have a dip in your supply. I won't get into that now, but let's just say, like, for all intents and purposes, once you drive your milk in and it's there, from 1 month of age to 6 months of age, it stays about the same. You don't have to make more milk as your baby gets older to be able to feed them more because they're older. They take the same amount in 24 hours, but they might start to take it differently. So we're going to talk about like feeding your baby and knowing how much to give in this series, but I want to put it out there now just to help your brains wrap around it. When your baby's breastfeeding, you don't know how much they're getting, right? We're going to start to trust the system, and I'll give you ways that you know that it's working. But they take about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces per hour. So babies take highs and lows. So if your bitty newborn's eating about every 2 hours, I know that a breastfed baby who takes about 1 ounce to 1.5 ounces per hour is probably taking about 2 to 3.5 ounces when you feed them. Okay, now they're spacing their feeds. They're eating every 3 hours during the day. They're probably taking somewhere between 3 to 4.5 ounces at feeds, all right? Because they're taking highs and lows in different amounts. Now, in the breastfeeding journey, if you ever felt like your supply was dipping a little bit low, a common example is when women get their period back. Real bummer, right? To get a period back when you're postpartum. We're like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. But when your period comes back, sometimes that impacts your supply. So women may feel like they need to increase demand during that time to tell their body that I need to increase my milk supply again during my period. So now we're making sure that that mom is either frequently breastfeeding or pumping or a little bit of both, and really emptying those breasts to keep up with your supply. So it's a really cool system of supply and demand.
Emily, real quick question, and I really want to note this. Like, we're seeing things on social media where moms are pumping like gallons of milk, right? And so
Yes.
of course that, like, it's hard to watch. What is a true definition of low milk supply? Like, what is that?
Sure. Let's talk about that a little bit. And I love that you brought up this social media piece, because I sat with a group of moms yesterday, and one of them told me, I don't have any milk in my freezer. I don't have anything stored. And I said, well, that's totally normal. You're just breastfeeding right now. But we see these things, freezers of hundreds of bags of milk, and that's actually really just not the norm. Now, everybody's supply is different, but let's get really clear on that answer of what I would diagnose as a practitioner as insufficient glandular tissue. So in your breast, you have all these milk ducts and you have tissue. So there are some women who are breastfeeding very frequently. They're pumping, they're eating healthy, they don't have any medical conditions that would cause a low supply. And we get 6 to 8 weeks out and they're struggling to make enough for their baby. What does it mean to make enough for your baby? I mean, we're going to use some averages here because every baby is different. But on average, babies take about 24 ounces in 24 hours. And we're feeding them every 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours. So looking at that total volume, they're splicing it up perhaps differently throughout the day. So my women who do have insufficient glandular tissue and aren't making enough for their baby might be able to breastfeed really well or pump, but they're not able to get to, let's call it, to keep math really even right now, to 24 ounces. Okay. Babies do take ranges. Some of my babies take less than 24 ounces in 24 hours. Some of my babies take in the 30s. So there are different caveats to this, but I think what's important takeaway from here is that everybody's supply is going to be different, and it's not for lack of effort, right? And sometimes there are reasons behind milk that is slower to come in or not having a full supply, postpartum hemorrhage, like a lot of blood loss. Sometimes I work with women and they have a thyroid out of balance that they didn't even know. I'll have them go get their blood work done. Some women overproduce, like they didn't even want this much milk, but they're in an overproduction. So truly, everyone's journey will look different. And I just want to have that reminder, I think, to answer this question, that your body will be different. And it's not always this like perfect scenario. Sometimes we have to like figure out where you're at and make a plan that's going to feel really good for you. Hopefully that answers your question. I'll come back to it if I didn't fully answer it.
It did. Thank you.
Great. Okay. I want to just quickly talk about a letdown, because everybody asked me about a letdown. And so they're like, what is that? You may have heard of it. Tell me in the chat if you've heard of a letdown. But basically, when babies go to the breast, they kind of remind me of little gremlins. They're like, like they're frantic, right? They're like, give me milk, give me milk, give me milk. And when they latch onto your breast, they start sucking, sucking, sucking because they want milk. But milk doesn't always come out right away. The sucking actually releases prolactin and oxytocin in your body, and it tells your body like, woo, let's push the milk out from the breast, through the nipple, into their mouth. Now, some women, the minute they're looking down or they latch their baby, milk is dripping. Everyone's going to be different. But some women will say to me, it feels like my baby's really sucking at first to try to get milk. And sometimes babies are just trying to stimulate that letdown and tell your body, like, let's get it flowing here. And some moms may feel tingling, or they'll feel really full in their breast. Some people just feel nothing. And so what I want to call out is, as your baby's trying to get onto the breast there in the beginning and they're really frantic and they want milk, is you may notice that they're frantically sucking, or their sucking might feel a little bit more shallow. I don't want a shallow latch, but it feels a little bit more shallow. And then all of a sudden, when the milk is flowing, they'll slow down. They kind of calm down, right? And now they're suck, suck, swallow, suck, suck, swallow. Your letdown is pretty cool, because when you're feeding on one side and your milk starts flowing, you're going to look down and your other side is leaking milk. So there's really cool products on the market now that you can wear on your other breast while you're breastfeeding to collect milk that would have just leaked into your bra. And so that's a little bit more on what your letdown is. I really want to get into latch now, because that's like the most important takeaway I would say from this class today, is that pain is not normal. I don't want you to tolerate pain. I want you to get help if you're having pain. No one should be like grinning it and bearing it or roughening, toughening up their nipples. That's not cool. And I always say not all latches are created equally, because if you Google breastfeeding or you read a old school nursing textbook, it might say you'll know that you have a deep latch if you can see little to no areola. Okay. I want to let that go, because everybody's latch and breasts and everything's going to be a little bit different, meaning you might have a really, really large breast and a really, really small nipple and areola. You might have a regular size breast and a really large nipple, a really small areola, or a really big areola, right? And I'm going to get to a deep latch and really talk you through it. I want to get that into your head so nobody's having pain and you're feeling good about feeding. But we want your baby to take a large mouthful of breast. Okay, that's where we're going with this. A shallow latch is usually what's causing pain. And sometimes it's one small thing that we can fix to make it better. Or it's damaging your nipple. It could be causing cracks, bleeding, blisters, or breakdown. It could be causing clogged ducts because we're not emptying the breast efficiently. And what's happening is something about that latch, the baby is not taking it deep, and the nipple is too far forward in their mouth. And it almost just feels like biting. I'm sure some of you out there know this feeling if you've done some breastfeeding, right? And it causes pain and damage. What I want everyone to know how to do today is how to get a deep latch. That is when your baby's mouth goes well past the nipple and it's covering areola and breast tissue, as much breast as possible. And what happens is the tongue is kind of like cupping underneath and it's protecting your nipple. All right. So when I think about taking a large mouthful of breast, I think about funny things that come to mind is like when you see on Instagram or TikTok, people are like, breastfeeding is like eating a sandwich. And it's like, what does that even mean? If I had a giant, where are my people from Pennsylvania? You know, hoagies, right? If I had a giant hoagie and I was like, whoa, I want to take a big bite of this, I'm probably going to give a little compression to that sandwich. And I want to make sure I get everything on that first bite. And I'm naturally going to put my bottom lip onto the sandwich first, and then I'm going to hook up to take my bite. I'm taking a big mouthful of sandwich. That's sort of how I think of breastfeeding. When we're coming onto the breast, the baby's mouth is going under and up and over. Let's talk more about what I mean. How do we get a good latch? And this is what I want you to know, especially in the hospital or those first weeks home. I have my baby here, okay? And so what commonly happens when I'm working with a mom and they have a shallow latch is they have their baby, they're holding their breast, and when their baby opens their mouth, they lean into the baby. So the baby's like, and they grab you, right? They get onto just the nipple here. And they're pinch, 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 suck, suck, suck. And it hurts. A lot of times my mom will have pain, will get the baby on, they're like, I know it's not good. I know it hurts and it shouldn't, but I don't want to break the baby off and do it again, right? You are the driver, you are in charge. When we're bringing our baby to the breast, what I want to teach you how to do is to have good control of your baby. You are holding your breast, and when they open their mouth, you are bringing them to you're bringing them to you. And how do we do this? When you're lining your baby up, always think nose to nipple, nose to nip. When your nipple tickles the tip of their nose, it stimulates a reflex, a newborn reflex where they go, and they do this big open mouth. The minute that baby opens their mouth is when I want you to bring them to the breast. And I want you to imagine that you're doing this scooping motion up and over where their chin hits first, then their bottom lip, then their top lip. Okay. And what that does, okay, chin up and over. Okay. What that does is the tongue gets tucked under, the nipple gets pushed back in the palate, and it gives them a giant mouthful of breast. And that's how we get that deep latch. Okay. So we're doing nose to nipple. They open up. I'm bringing the baby in a scooping motion up and over. And then I'm going to sit for a second and say, what do I see? You're looking for what I feel like is like fish lips is a good way to describe it. The wets of their lip. They flare out on the top. They flare out on the bottom. Okay. And when they're latched on and they're sucking, I have a great mom cozy pillow here that I'm going to use to show you. Okay. So this is why I like a good breastfeeding pillow. Babies lay down while they're eating, right? So like now that my baby's on my breast here, what am I looking for as a lactation consultant when I come in and see you? I want their ear, their shoulders, and their hips in a nice straight line. Babies that are turned out are gravity, pulling on that nipple. I want them nice and faced in. And as I look down at this baby, or you look down at your baby, can you see the wets of their lips? Do you have a nice round cheek? Cheeks that are darting or have like a dimple here and are pulling, probably tight and shallow, and we want to break them off and start them again. So nose to nipple, mouth open, up and over, chin, bottom lip, top lip. Okay. Do we see the fish lips? Are they nice and rounded? Are we not having pain? We don't want pain. Okay. A deep latch should not cause pain. If you're uncomfortable, we want to break the seal and start again, which I know really stinks for you and you don't want to do it. I've been there. I've nursed 3 kids and you're like, oh, but what you need to do is you need to get your finger in their mouth, right in the crook here, and push up to the palate, to the roof of their mouth. So they latch to your finger and you can pop them off without hurting yourself. And you're starting again. You are in charge. You are the driver of the seat. And your baby might not like it. They want to do it their way, but you're going to keep showing up every day and practicing this latch. And they're going to start to get it. They're going to, okay, I'll do it your way. I'll do it your way. And that's what's going to protect your nipple, help damage that's there to heal, or to prevent damage. Okay, so I'm going to sum it up here. Clearly, I'm beating this into your brain, but you know that you have a deep latch because it's comfortable. There's no pain. Your baby's head is straight on and not turned out to the side. The chin is touching your breast, okay? The mouth has a big mouthful of breast, not just nipple or pinchy. Lips are flared out. You might even see the tongue cupped under your breast. All right. It's cute. Their ears start kind of moving. And everybody wants to know, well, how do I know they're getting milk? I want you to start listening. Okay. You feel sucking. You're going to start hearing swallowing. You might not at first because it's colostrum and transitional milk, but as that full milk comes in, you're going to hear like, okay? And you hear them swallowing. And that's when you're like, yeah, they're eating, okay? That's how I know they're eating. Some babies will stay on your breast all day. They're like, I would love to stay here all day. So if you have sore nipples or it's, they're not swallowing anymore, but they're still self-soothing, it is okay to break them off and offer them the other side or to soothe them and move on. If you've had a really good feed, let's call it 10 to 15 minutes where you really heard that swallowing, they got a good burp in, maybe they took the other side, maybe they didn't. They take breaks between sides. And so those are some little things that I want you listening for. In terms of early on breastfeeding too, I would say feel your breast before you latch. get your baby on, listen for swallowing. If you need to encourage them to feed, you can blow on them, chicken wing their arm, tickle their feet. That stimulates sucking and swallowing to help them, right? Because they're sleepy at first. Then when they're done and they come off, feel your breast again. What does it feel like? Probably feels softer and different. The more you get to know yourself and your supply, that's going to help your brain of like, okay, my baby's getting milk. Then I'll say to patients, are they peeing? Do they have a wet diaper every time you change them? Are they pooping? We're going to talk about pees and poops, so I won't get too far ahead of myself. And are they gaining weight? And then you start to really trust the system. I want to point out some positions. I love a good pillow. I have one here from Mom Cozy, and I think it's great because you can adjust it so it fits your body well. It has like an extra rest on the end of it for your baby to lounge on. There are different breastfeeding positions. You do not have to become a master in all of them. You're probably going to figure out what works on one side and what works on the other side. And you're going to be like, that feels good to me. I'm going to get good at that. And maybe as you get further out, you want to try other things. I am right-handed. So when I breastfed my girls, I liked to hold them with my right hand behind. This is where you hold babies. Touch yourselves here. Feel behind your ears, those kind of bony prominences. We support babies there. We don't hold their head. We don't hold their neck. We kind of support them right here behind their head. And I'm right-handed. So I found it easier to use my right hand and bring the baby across my body when I was feeding on my left side. And then when I came over to my right side, I found it easier to do football because I felt stronger and more comfortable using my right hand. So there are different positions: cradle, cross cradle, football. We call it football because it's like, hey, hike, I'm gonna hike the baby, right? You're coming like from behind on the pillow here, like a football hold, which I think is kind of cool. For my moms who have twins, we usually do football. We do both babies on each side. Side lying is great, especially if you had a C-section and it's really uncomfortable to sit with your incision. You can get really comfy, cozy in your bed, and you can bring the baby up on their side. And then I want to call out a laid back position because I get questions about this all the time. For my moms who make a lot of milk and you have an oversupply, and you know this because your baby slips on and off when they first latch because there's so much milk, or they cough. A laid back position is where when I latch a baby and I'm breastfeeding, they're usually below my breast, right? So gravity is kind of against them. If you have a lot of milk, once they're latched, I want you to sit back and recline, okay? You don't have to lay flat, but get comfy here. And what this does is it brings the baby from under to over the breast, and then gravity is more on their side, and that can help them with a really forceful letdown or flow. How do you know your baby's hungry? Every baby's gonna be different. Some babies will give you early cues, then they get more active, then they have late cues. Some babies just wake up and they're hangry. They go from like 0 to a million in a second, but early hunger cues, babies will smack and lick their lips. They open their mouth, and it's really cute. They do like a rooting. They're bobbing their head around and looking for food. They may suck on their lips, their hands, their tongues. If you're holding them, like sometimes I'm holding newborns to bring the baby to the mom, they're like sucking on my scrubs, and I'm like, oh gosh, you're hungry. There's nothing in these scrubs or these boobs. I'm done. They start to get clenched fists, like they're hungry, right? If we miss these early cues, or sometimes they just go right to rooting, getting fidgety, squirming. Older kids will kind of hit your arm. They start to get fussy. Late signs are usually crying, like they're upset, they're hungry. And I do want to call out this frantic side-to-side movement. So a baby that's really hungry and you put it to the breast and you're trying to latch them and they frantically shake their head. Some moms will say to me, they don't like my breast. They don't want to eat. And that's not it at all. It's just a late hunger sign. They're really hungry. They're probably overstimulated. They're frantic and they can't get organized. And so we just have to be patient and calmly latch them. If they pop off, we put them on again. What we can try to do is try to avoid a baby being really hungry or hangry. And later in the series, in the 4th session, I'm also going to teach you how to avoid an overtired baby. because it's hard when your baby's really hangry or when they're overtired. Those are the two hardest moments as a parent with a newborn. So I want to teach you how to like try to avoid them or make them better if they happen, when they happen, because we're all parents. It's going to happen, even to me with my 3 kids. Babies that are just waking up out of a sleep and they're in a light sleep, you can see their eyes moving under their eyelids. That's a great time to pick a baby up and initiate a feed. If you're coming up on it's been 2 or 3 hours since their last one, or if you're starting to see them looking around, and get them right on the breast right then. If you have a baby that gets upset pretty quickly, then I just feed them right away. Meaning, if your baby just goes boop, 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 like no in between here, what I'll do is when they wake up from a feed, is I'll just put them right to the breast. Meaning, I wouldn't unswaddle. Sometimes I don't unswaddle them, or maybe you don't stop to change their diaper before the feed because you know they're going to get really upset. So maybe you feed them first. Every baby will be different. You will start to know your baby and what works for them, truly. How often should you feed your newborn? Okay, so after birth, it is very on demand, especially as you're trying to like stimulate your milk and drive your milk supply in. It can feel like you're feeding them all the time. There are periods of what we call cluster feeding, especially in those first days where cluster feeding is your baby feeding very frequently. So like you put them on this side and an hour later they're hungry again, so this side, an hour later this side. And that's where nipples can start to get a little sore. So we do wanna find a balance here where I do want you to feed on demand. I want you to put your baby to breast when they're hungry, but if you're starting to get really sore from that, that's a good reason to ask for help. So we can try to help you space feeds a little bit just to give your nipples a break. But babies eat a lot. They eat a lot, right? And I told you that these tiny, tiny little bellies, finally getting to like a ping pong ball. So they take frequent feeds because they're taking smaller amounts. In about 24 hours, your newborn may eat about 10 to 12 times. This starts to look like in that first week with that newborn, every 2 hours during the day and about every 3 hours at night, which is a lot, right? As your milk comes in, some babies are able to space their feeds to about every 2 to 3 hours during the day, and they might be able to space their feeds to every 3 to 4 hours at night. I bet your heads are spinning with sleep questions, and I'm gonna school you on sleep on the 4th series of this. So please come to that and hang on to it, because I am gonna teach you how to get longer stretches at night as you're feeding a newborn. But just to keep it simple right now, all of your babies will lose weight. They're born at a certain weight. They lose a little bit of weight before you go home from the hospital. We expect that. It makes sense, right? Because you have colostrum, then transitional milk, the milk. They have 2 weeks to regain their birth weight. So in those first 2 weeks, we're just feeding babies, right? We're feeding them whenever they want to eat, really on demand, probably about every 2 to 3 hours. Most pediatricians agree that once your baby has regained their birth weight, you do not need to wake them up at night anymore for feeds. They can be your alarm clock. Now they're a newborn. They still need to eat frequently and they're still going to want to eat overnight. But instead of setting an alarm for 3 in the morning after you did a feed at midnight, feed your baby at midnight, you can put them down and you can just wait for your baby to wake up hungry and then you can feed them. Okay. So I always encourage you to check with your pediatrician on that if that makes sense for you and your baby. Everybody will obviously be different.
Quick question here. I know we're running on 15 minutes, but the weight check, all of us moms are very worried when we go in the pediatrician and we've all heard, oh, they're getting, we have a little anxiety.
Yeah.
What would you say, to maybe to ease some anxieties there if baby isn't gaining weight at because I know it's the global index standard that's used, the standards are different. Anything you can say to that in just a minute or two?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy for me in this moment to be like, I want you to take a deep breath, because there are situations where babies they need a little more time to regain that birth weight, or they might be breastfeeding really, really well, but your full milk supply isn't in yet. Maybe they just have higher levels of bilirubin. They have a little bit of jaundice that they're still trying to clear. So I think the first place to start is getting an understanding of why it's happening, right? Because that is going to empower you to be like, okay, this is why it's happening. And now I can back into a plan for the solution, right? And sometimes we are overwhelmed and anxious because we don't understand, right? And somebody might not explain it to us. You're sitting in the pediatrician and they just say, baby didn't gain enough weight. I'm going to need you to supplement. and then they send you home with a can of formula, and you're a breastfeeding mom and you don't know what to do, right? And so we want to seek support of the people that can support us and educate us in that moment of, okay, how do we get to a place where your baby is gaining weight, but we're meeting your feeding goals, and we're making sure that your baby gets the right calories and nutrition? There's so many scenarios. So step one is, if your baby isn't hitting a milestone, or in general throughout this whole journey, or you don't understand something, or someone doesn't explain something to you, or you're feeling anxious, I want you to say to your provider, I'm feeling anxious about the weight gain. Can you explain this to me? Are you feeling worried about the weight gain? And if so, can you explain to me why? Or you referenced that my baby was in a smaller percentile. Can you show me the growth chart and just explain to me like what you're looking at and how that works? My favorite question to ask providers is, what are my options? Okay, so they may say to you, your baby, they're gaining weight, but kind of slow. And you're like, what does that mean? Right? And so then you can say to them, well, what are my options? And they may say to you, I want you to keep breastfeeding. You can come back in a week and I'll check the weight again. Or I want you to breastfeed and supplement and I'll check on you in 3 days, right? Maybe they'll give you options. Another thing I'll say is, I hear that you're making that recommendation. Can you tell me why? And I'm not trying to challenge the provider, but I just want to understand, okay? So you're telling me to take a medication, or you're telling me to do something this way, or you're recommending I do this. I hear you. I respect you because you're my doctor and I trust you. Can you just explain to me like why you're making the recommendation? It all just comes back to knowledge, and things move quick in the healthcare system. People move all around you, and sometimes we forget to explain basic stuff. And you need to know what's going on. You need to understand, and you need to be able to make good choices for your family. So I want you to know how to ask questions to get your options. Sound good? I'm very passionate about this topic. I could talk all day, so I'll move myself along, but I would like, if you need help with these types of conversations, let me know and we can talk them through. I kind of jumped ahead. I referenced the stomach size already, but I do love showing these foods because I think it like helps your brain understand. And it just goes back to like capacity, because everybody wonders, how much is my baby getting? And so again, in the beginning, it's really, really tiny, like this cherry or that marble I said. As they get a little bit older, that shooter marble, ping pong ball capacity is getting bigger. About a week old, their stomach is bigger now, and they're taking about 1.5 ounces to 2 ounces of breast milk, or whatever they're eating. And by a month, their stomach is about the size of an egg. That's really where you start to see volume uptick with feeds, is about a month of age. Or they may be spacing feeds from every 2 hours, every 3 hours, because they're able to take in more in a feed. All right. I want to talk about poops and pees because it's important to talk about in terms of your poops and pees with a breastfeeding baby. All babies, their first poop is meconium. Meconium lines their intestines when they're growing in your belly. And some of them pass it in utero. So you might get meconium in your amniotic fluid, especially if you go past your due date and your baby's like super cooked and smart and ready to get things started. And so the first poop is going to be black. It's thick, it's sticky like tar. And they're just clearing that from their system. Breast milk's really cool because the components of breast milk are built to help their gut and to help them clear that meconium. And as your milk transitions to that transitional milk and becomes more in quantity, the poop starts to change to like a brown or green color. When your mature milk comes in, that full supply, and they're eating more volume, a breastfed baby's poop becomes yellow and seedy, which is very interesting. It looks like yellow mustard with little seeds in it. And so that's sort of the progression of poop. Pees, we expect, and don't worry about this too much. The hospitals give you trackers to track like wet and dirty diapers the first week home, but we want about 1 wet diaper for every day old they are. So day 1, I want to make sure they have 1 wet diaper. If I'm visiting you with a 5-year-old baby, I want to make sure they have 5 wet diapers in that first week. That's how we're like helping you remember it. Urine is very concentrated for newborns. And sometimes from the hormones, it has this like pink, red, or orange powderiness to urine. It's called brick dust. It's very normal, common, but it'll look weird to you. So you'll probably call your nurse in at the hospital, and then they'll remind you what it is. but it's that really like concentrated urine. And the concentration causes almost like, let's call it a crystallization to it, and then this coloring called brick dust. But as your milk comes in and they're eating more, the urine is less concentrated and it becomes more pale and odorless. I want to end with like how your partner can support you. I help so many parents, and oftentimes classes just speak to the mom, which is great. But when you're breastfeeding, you need help. You need a lot of help. And partners often are like, what can I do? Like, what can I do to help? And those first 4 weeks, I always say, like, do you feel like a bit of survival mode? All you're doing is feeding your baby and trying to help them sleep. Feeding your baby, trying to help them sleep. You should be feeding yourself and getting yourself some sleep too, right? But that's sort of like the mode that we're in. And that's really all you can do, right? It's your job to sleep, eat, take care of yourself, feed your baby. You're not really doing other things. The expectation is not that you're like out and about or running loads of laundry or cooking dinner. Like, you need to take care of yourself, especially as you're learning to feed your baby and navigating this. What can your partner do? You guys can tag team, okay? Y'all can tag team. So if you, or I'll use myself as an example. In the middle of the night, I would breastfeed Grace, burp her, offer the other side, and then I would hand her to my husband, and he would change her diaper, swaddle her, and walk her around our room and soothe her, okay? I could have done that. I was up anyway, but it was really nice to hand her over after the feed so I could put my nipple cream on, take some water, lay back down and start to unwind so I can go back to sleep. And while I was breastfeeding, he was still kind of like asleep or in a lighter sleep. I'm handing him over the baby, right? Getting really into like diapering and the swaddling and the soothing, get you into some tag teaming. You really need to think about outsourcing. We posted a really cool post on our Instagram today about outsourcing. We're giving away some classes on it, but we basically are saying, like, listen, if you're pregnant or you have a new baby, you need a lot of help. It's temporary, but what can you outsource to? And it doesn't even have to be paid, like family, friends who can come and help you, groceries, laundry, having dinners delivered, walking the dog. And where are areas that you can tag team with your partner? See, I talk too much and lose my voice. Sometimes, I'm not going to go deep on this because there's so many scenarios and caveats, but I work with moms who are breastfeeding who might be struggling with their mental health, some postpartum anxiety or depression, or they might be really sore, they might be really tired, they may be at a C-section. There are ways to navigate being a breastfeeding mom and having your partner still help you at night, or so that you can get a little bit of sleep, and it might mean missing a feed. And anything in parenting, from breastfeeding through life, is weighing risk, benefit, and what your options are, and then making a choice that's actually like the best for you. And so when I think about how NAPS can help you with your feeding, I want you to check us out. Follow us on Instagram if you just want to get more of our vibe. Mom Cozy, our partnership, we're offering you support. I will be on the Facebook group through Mom Cozy. We're offering you discounts on our membership, on our lactation consults. They're virtual. You can do them from anywhere in the world. I do phone calls all the time, 30-minute phone calls. Your feeding plan is going to look really unique to you, and your struggles are going to be different from somebody else's struggles. The room I sat in yesterday had a mom that wasn't making enough milk, and it had a mom that was making too much milk. And they felt a little afraid to share it because they were like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say that I have too much milk because you don't have enough milk. And the one, right? But everybody's journey will be different, and that's okay. What we need to do is figure out what your plan needs to be, right? And that's looking at a lot of things. Part of being a nurse and working with real nurses and nurture is that it's not cookie cutter. We're not going to give you a one fits all thing. I'm going to ask you, or our nurses are going to ask you a lot of questions about you, about your partner, about your baby, about the weight gain, about how you're feeding, about sleep, about your work. Like, there's so many things that I think about when it comes to supporting a breastfeeding mom before I tell her how to, what I think would be good options for her. So I don't want to take up too much time because I want to get to our giveaways and our winners, but I do want you to check us out. Check us out on Instagram. Nurture by NAPS is our handle. Check out our online membership. And your unique code if you want to do some services this month in honor of World Breastfeeding Week. In this partnership with Mom Cozy, we're offering you all discounts on certain services. The code is MomCozy20. It's good for the month of August. And if you're just not sure where to start and you've heard me talk today and you're like, I don't know what I need to do, just ask me. You can email, you can DM me, let me know you came to the webinar today and tell me what you need and I'll help you find the right resource. All right, I'm going to turn it back to Mom Cozy and any questions that we might have.
We have so many questions. So
I
I'm wondering, Emily, we can answer a couple here, but I'm going to give these questions to Emily. And on Wednesday, y'all, she will address these questions on our Facebook group. So if you are not joined now, you asked a question today and it did not get answered, I need you to join this Mom Cozy community. Every Wednesday, Emily is here. You can also email her directly at emily@nurturebynaps.com. And the recording of this webinar will be sent to you by email on Monday. So with that, I'm going to just pick a couple questions out and kind of shout them out to you.
Okay.
And then
I can't see them, so this is fun. It's like,
yeah, I'm going to shout them out to you. And we're going to stay over just a little bit, y'all. If you have to hop off, that's perfectly okay. But we're going to try to answer some of these questions and we'll get the rest in the community on Wednesday. All right. A question here. My 2-month-old is gagging and choking when she's on the breast. However, she takes a bottle just fine. Does that mean my nipples are too big?
Not necessarily. My first thought is how your supply is. Oftentimes, if we have an oversupply or a forceful letdown, that can be hard. And I will come back to that recline feeding. When your baby latches, if the flow is really quite overwhelming, then they gag, they cough, they pop off. And that's where my mind's going because you're telling me they're not having trouble with a bottle, where like a bottle might have that slower nipple and it's more controlled. Okay. It's not to say you can't breastfeed. My advice for you to try, if this is what's happening, is to think about, could you hand express or remove a little bit of your letdown before you latch your baby? So there's like silicone pumps, handheld pumps, your hand. Could you actually take off like a half an ounce or an ounce before the feed to really get that strong letdown like out of the way a bit? Then latch your baby. The biggest thing for you is once they're on is I do want you to practice that recline feed and getting that baby up and over your breast so gravity is on their side. And if that doesn't work, then come back to me and maybe we need to like do a virtual consult and I will look at your anatomy and make a plan.
Awesome. There's a lot of questions about pumping, y'all. Our next webinar is called Navigating Pumping, which will be all about pumping. So I think a lot of these questions will get answered there. So I'm going to next one, twins. We have some twin mamas here. And the question is, do I have to supplement? Or I mean, do I is it common to switch twins on each side, keep them on separate sides of feeding? Give us just a little bit of notes on twin feeding. Yeah,
I mean, twins, first of all, congratulations and well done on feeding 2 babies, however you're doing it. It's a lot of work. You know, I see a lot of scenarios with my twins who are breastfeeding. It's going to come down to how much breast milk your body makes. I've had moms who exclusively breastfeed and they make copious amounts of breast milk to feed 2 babies. And because there's 2 babies, there's extra sucking and stimulation. It usually does send your body into a bit more of an overdrive of like, there's 2 babies here, you need to make more. I do have some moms who are doing everything they can to bring their milk in, and they have 2 babies and they don't make enough to exclusively feed their babies at the breast. That's not to say that would happen to you, but that is a scenario. And so sometimes they'll breastfeed 1 baby while 1 baby gets a bottle and they go back and forth like that. So those are a couple like scenarios of many. But I like these pillows. What I do usually have moms do is if you are nursing both babies at one time, you football hold and you latch them on each side. And then after like 10 to 15 minutes or 20 minutes into that feed, they either fall off or you break the seal and you switch them just to encourage like that back and forth. And you want to make sure you're switching breasts between the twins as well. So I would say The goal is always to get started with breastfeeding. Now, and then if you're not sure that they're getting enough or they're having weight gain issues, to work with lactation, because sometimes we can give you extra little things to do to boost your supply. Sometimes we might just say to you, this is what your supply is, like, let's make a plan. And so the other thing that I'll add in too is babies are different, right? So sometimes with my twins, one baby comes out and they're like, yes, like I love eating, and they're really good at latching and sucking and swallowing. And another baby maybe spent some time in the NICU, or they're a bit smaller and they're still working on breathing. And they can't eat until they can breathe. So sometimes with my twins, one baby gets off to the races breastfeeding, and the other one might be taking bottles because they spend time in the NICU. But as long as you're breastfeeding or pumping and you keep your supply up, we can then teach babies to get back to the breast.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. We're getting over. Emily, is it okay if you stay a little bit longer? Are you okay with
Yeah,
that?
let's do 1 or 2 more questions.
1 or 2.
If you are out there and you want me to answer you today, you can use your Mom Cozy discount and join the membership and use the Ask a Nurse board, and I'll answer you by 4 o'clock.
Hey, I love that.
Okay.
There's a lot of questions about colostrum, when to start collecting it, how many
sure.
weeks, when can you start harvesting it? How do you do it?
Yeah, totally up to you. So, colostrum, my patients who collect and harvest it, typically around like 36 to 37 weeks is when they'll start doing it. There are some providers who will tell you to not do it until 37 weeks. There's this like thought that nipple stimulation can put you into labor. Although there's not like a whole heck of a lot of research to support that. So I do feel like that's probably why you hear about 37 weeks. You are obviously making colostrum earlier than that. If you're leaking colostrum, or you can touch your nipple and it comes out, you can collect it. Maybe at 37 weeks or beyond, if you want to start once a day or twice a day, if you want to express, and that expression goes back to like just kind of gently pushing from the top of your breast tissue down towards the base of your areola and your nipple, and you'll see that glistening colostrum. The easiest way to collect it, or the way that I do it, is getting those tiny, tiny baby syringes. Sometimes the pharmacists will give you them at CVS, but they're really, really tiny syringes, and you're actually just pushing it into the top of that syringe. You can get them online too, but they're capped off. And that's because it's such a small amount. But if you can get it into the syringe, you can add to that syringe, and then you're keeping it in your refrigerator all day as you're adding to it. And you can put it in the freezer. And women bring them to the hospital. And in the first day or 2 home, you can then put the syringe in the corner of your baby's mouth and kind of give them that colostrum. So a lot of ways to do that. Maybe we can actually in the follow-up email throw in a little article on colostrum harvesting, like why you would do it and how you would do it. Just because I gave you a really quick and dirty answer there.
Absolutely. Our last question is, I know you talked about pain, but when should you be worried, expecting mastitis, suspecting mastitis? Like, what's the difference between pain and like mastitis, and when I should like be notably worried?
Totally. Pain can come in all different shapes and sizes. It could be that your nipple has pain, that it's bleeding, cracked, damaged, blisters on it, like physical damage that you can see. Sometimes my women have burning or itching nipples or shooting pain in their breast tissue. So when women are coming to me, I'm trying to identify what kind of pain they're having, where it's happening, within relation, is it before a feed, during, or after? What makes it better? What makes it worse? So I can decide, is it the latch? Is it yeast? Or let's talk about mastitis. Mastitis is a bacterial infection in the breast tissue. There's a lot of thoughts of how you can get mastitis. Commonly in my practice, I see that women have either like a shallow latch or they had damage. So like likely bacteria creeped into the breast tissue that way. Mastitis, though, while it's a bacterial infection, it becomes pretty black and white to know if you have it or not, because you don't feel good when you have mastitis. Your body's reaction is typically one breath gets really hot, really warm to touch. It is physically painful. Sometimes supply is lower on that side, but it's also accompanied by a fever or flu-like symptoms. So women, like, they might not have spiked a fever yet, but they feel like they're getting a flu and they're really not feeling well, or they have spiked a fever, and a fever is a temperature of 100.4 or greater. So if you are postpartum and you ever have a fever, you should call your obstetrician, because then we are able to tease out if you have an infection, and we would prescribe you oral antibiotics that are
Okay.
safe for breastfeeding.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Emily.
Well,
There is a QR code on the slide. Please tell us how we did today. We really want to hear from you. We listen to you. We literally adjust content to what you need. So take a screenshot of that. Please take 5 minutes. And now we are going to get to our favorite part of all, our live giveaways. We are going to give away 10 breastfeeding energy bags filled with goodies. And we're also going to give away 10 free year-long NAPS memberships so you can experience this amazing education all year long. So I'm going to call out 10 names. I'm also going to put these names in the chat. When I am done, you have to type here. Okay, you have to be here to win. And you have to email me at mcp@momcozy.com. Okay? If you do not email me, you are not going to get your prize. All right? All you have to do is stay here. If we call your name, you're in. And then please email me just so we have your information. All right, here we go. The first person who has won is Alina Sung. Type here, Alina. The next person that has won is Ebru Amir. All right. The next person who has won is, hi, Ebru. That's so weird. Harley Knight. Harley, you won. All right. The next person we have is Lauren Foster. All right. We're up to our 5th winner is Maria Diaz. Our 6th winner is Rachel Haddad. Our 7th winner, I'm literally just kind of going through it and randomly picking y'all, is, oh, sorry about that, Yuki Gao. Our 8th winner is Joanne Kibel. Wow. And our last winner, wait, that was 9, right? Do I have 2 more or 1 more?
we're at 9.
I was at 9. Okay. I'm like scrolling. Where do I stop? Where do I stop? Is, okay, last winner, Chome Jamie. All right. So you have to say here, please email me at mcp@momcozy.com to get your gifts. Congratulations to our winners. All right. With that, Maria's here. All right. Congratulations. With that, this is all we have today. You can still have a chance to win. Join us for next week's webinar, which is going to be navigating pumping. I know you all asked a lot of questions about
I see
pumping,
them.
bottle feeding. We will address those questions next week. Tell your friends to come to this. This is very awesome information, and this is free to you. Here's the registration form. I want you to send this to a friend, and we will email you on Monday with a recording. With that, thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.